Hey there, nation. This is Commander CheapSkate, and this is the show that helps you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. I am Commander CheapSkate, and this is still a battle within the first turn of our campaign, Hamejarr Shame. So this is our second battle in turn one, and this battle involves Bugman's Rangers, which are the Dwarves, versus Lady Domina of the Dark Elves. And once again, this is a player versus neutral army playlist, so as the Game Master, I will be commanding Bugman's Rangers, and I'll be fighting against Lady Domina, who is a player who plays Dark Elves. So let's see what happens when stunty dwarves with massive war axes go up against squishy elves with long-range firepower.
Crom, I've never prayed you before. I have no tongue for it. No one, not even you, will remember if we were good men or bad, why we fought or why we died. No. All that matters is that two stood against many. That's what's important. Valor pleases you, Crom. So grant me one request. Grant me revenge. And if you do not listen, then the hell with you.
That's right, boys and girls. Commander CheapSkate is slowly learning how to include graphics and text into his pictures. So this time, you guys don't need to worry about reading like credits scrolling across the entire army, blocking your view of the army. So you don't have to worry about that anymore. Apparently, it just took a little bit of time and effort to figure out how to put text inside pictures. But anyways, this, as you are well aware of, is the introduction for all the armies. So this is my army that I will be playing as a Game Master, which is Bugman's Rangers. It's a pretty straight up, kind of simple build to go with. We're going with 7th edition rules on this one, which is the previous Dwarf book. We didn't have the new Dwarf Army book yet, so we had to use some of the older rules on this one. But pretty much it's two units. It totals up to 750 points. On the left there, you guys have about 20 Dwarf Warriors. They're called Ragnarson's Rangers. Basically, they're equipped with shields, great weapons, as well as a standard bearer champion musician. In the center there, you have the General of the Army, that is Joseph Bugman, the notorious special character for the Dwarf Army. He is a Thane with magical weapons, so he will be included in this army. And on the right there, you have Bugman's Rangers, which are 15 Dwarf Rangers, just regular Dwarf Rangers. They're not the Bugman's Rangers upgraded types. They're just the regular vanilla Dwarf Rangers that you see in the Army rulebook. And those guys, of course, have their crossbows, their hatchets, as well as great weapons and shields. They also have a champion, as well as a standard bearer and a musician. So, yeah, this is the army that's laid out for this battle. And this is Domina's Sorrow. This is the Dark Elf army that is commanded by Lady Domina. She is one of the players in this campaign, and this is her first battle for turn one. Her Dark Elf army is 685 points, so let's go on and get this started. Her commander is a Supreme Sorceress, level 4 Supreme Sorceress. She's right there in the middle, just left of the Dark Shard unit. Her core choice is 16 Dark Shards, armed with shields, as well as a repeater crossbows, and she also has standard bearers, a musician, as well as a champion within that unit. For her special choice, she has a repeater bolt thrower with just one with the crew, which are pretty deadly. If anyone has ever fought against Dark Elves or High Elves knows, their bolt throwers can be pretty gruesome and pretty dangerous at range. And then on the far right-hand side, those are supposed to be 5 Doomfire Warlocks. They are proxied by 5 Colwyn Riders. I know a lot of people don't like using proxy models. Some people have issue with it because they feel like, if the model is the model, you shouldn't be able to use it. But, if you just want to try out units for the first time and see what it looks like and see how they operate in battle, and you don't want to spend your money first and take a gamble on a unit you don't like, I think proxying is a great way to do things. And plus, it gives you some diversity that you play. All you got to be aware of is that if your opponent will allow it or not. Most people don't have a problem with it because everybody has at least 1 or 2 proxy models in their armies, at least most cases, some people do. But, if your opponent doesn't want you to use proxy models, well, maybe you shouldn't play against that person because that person sounds kind of a meanie, but, whatever the case may be. So this is Domina's Sorrows. This is her first army, and she's going to be using this in the battle to come. So let's see what happens. And just when you thought that all was well with Commander CheapSkate because he finally got his grasp on how to use graphics inside of photos, he gives you this picture, which is a vertical or portrait shot of the battlefield. I forgot to get one of a landscape shot so that way you can see the entire battlefield. I was just so excited to play. I just wanted to take this picture and start going at it. So the entire left-hand side of the deployment zone is completely cut off on this picture. So I'm kind of sad. So you just have to use the power of your imagination to imagine to the left-hand side. But this is the right-hand side of the battlefield. I got to go first with my deployment. So as you can see here on my side, on the near side, I put my dwarf warriors right in the right-hand side of my deployment zone. The idea was that I wanted to put that there first. That way, she would line up her dark shards right across from my unit. The hope was that if I put that there, Lady Domino would, put her dark shards right in front of them, so that way she could shoot at them with the most fire that she could possibly get as I marched towards her, which was good because then I use my Dwarf Rangers. And the idea is because they have scouting, they can pretty much go where they want inside the deployment zone or beyond it as long as they're 12 inches away from the opposing unit and they don't charge in the first turn. So as you can see on those standing stones on the right-hand side, I put my Dwarf Rangers right in there, used the stones to kind of defend the Dwarf Rangers from the Bolt Thrower, which is on the very left-hand side of the battlefield, which is cut off from this picture, as well as where her Doomfire Warlocks are located at. So I stuck my Dwarf Rangers in those standing stones. The idea was that I was going to take a couple pot shots at Dark Shards, try to thin them down a little bit, and then rush and charge into them as quickly as possible and try to take out that unit as well as the Army General. Basically sending my Dwarf Rangers on a suicide mission. She saw that after I hit the deployment zone. She got kind of upset, but, Lady Domino is a true lady, so she, of course, puts her Doomfire Warlocks right there on her right side of her army to try to engage the Dwarf Rangers before they get a chance to charge out of the standing stones and get her Dark Shards. Because, Doomfire Warlocks, they are pretty much fancified chafing units, really. They're chaffed. The idea is that they're supposed to stop you from engaging your key opponents, so why not do it that way? And this is a picture of Lady Domino's spells that she has for this battle. She has 4 of them. She rolled for 2 of the dice. She didn't like the 2 of the spells, so she went with Aura of Darkness as well as Doombolt. And then she also rolled for Word of Pain and Shroud of Despair. And since I'm a dwarf and we don't believe in magic, there's no magic for my army. And so now we start with Dwarf turn number 1. Not very much really happened in the Dwarf turn movement phase. I forgot to take some photos of it, but my Dwarf warriors at the very part of my deployment zone, they marched forward 6 inches, trying to get as quickly into the main battle line as they could, the Dark Elves. The main action really took place on the right-hand flank with my Dwarf Rangers. As you can see, I didn't really move the Dwarf Rangers because unfortunately when it comes to crossbows, those weapons are pretty much either move or shoot. So because of that, I wanted to make sure that my Dwarves Rangers had a chance to shoot with the crossbows instead of losing the shot by moving. So I kept the Dwarf Rangers right where they were. And so for movement phase, that was pretty much it. Since on dwarves, we really don't have magic, so there's nothing to show in that part. So then we go right to the shooting phase, which is the whole point of what I was trying to do for this battle. Which brings us to this really handy-dandy little graphic now that's on the photo. As you can see there on that giant red arrow, that signifies my Dwarf Rangers taking their crossbows and opening up. I had 10 Rangers open fire with their crossbows. Luckily for me, there was no penalty to hit because they were within short range of their crossbows. So we took aim, fired, opened up with the Dark Shards, and right off the bat, my men score 5 kills on that Dark Shard unit, which, is understandable. I mean, strength 4 weapons against a toughness of 3. They only have light armor and shields. So I killed 5 of them out of the 5 that shot, so that was pretty good. My opponent did have to take a panic check. She passed the panic check, so her Dark Elf stayed there. And that's pretty much all of Dwarf turn 1 since there's no hand-to-hand combat. So on to the Dark Elves. For Dark Elf turn number 1, her turn, Lady Domino's turn, was pretty uneventful as mine. She didn't really move any of her troops. She wanted her build of her army was more of a long-range shooting and using magic type of build. You also understand too that a lot of the players in this campaign are also novice players. This is the very first time they're really playing Warhammer. I mean, they played a couple of battles before where I was there to kind of coach them what to do. So this is actually the first time that they as players are playing on their own using the rules. So Lady Domino was a little bit more hesitant to do hand-to-hand combat with her army. She wanted to go for more of a long-range shooting type of army that used magic as well as long-range firepower to destroy her enemies, which is, it's a pretty good mix when you use for Dark Elves. So because of that, she really didn't move any of her forces. She kind of angled her Doomfire Warlocks so they can get a better chance to fire Doombolt at my Ranger unit because she perceived that as the greatest threat. Unfortunately for her, though, magic ended up being a wash. She rolled like she rolled 2 dice and ended up getting like 3 of them. She tried to cast one of her spells and use all 3 of them on the Doom Bolt to try to hit my try to use all 3 of those power dice on the 2 Doom Bolt spells that she could cast. The first one with her Supreme Sorceress, she used 2 dice and the spell didn't go off. She didn't roll high enough. And then the one spell that she did have for her Doomfire Warlocks, since it's a balanced spell, she rolled a perfect. She rolled like a 5 to get that off, and then I easily dispelled it with the 2 dice that I had for my dispel dice. So magic for her was ending up pretty much being a wash. So the main highlight for her in this return was shooting phase as well. So she takes her crossbows, opens up on the Dwarf Rangers, which is the nearest unit towards her, and she kills 3 of my Rangers. Which she was kind of sad about that, but then she realized, she's using Strength 3 crossbows. She gets multiple shots, which is kind of nice, but against dwarves with the toughness of 4, as well as their heavy armor and their shields, they stand a pretty good chance of making it. So a lot of my dwarf rangers weather the blows, even with the armor piercing rule attached. So that was kind of nice. So that ended up being her entire turn. She also opened up with the repeater bolt thrower. She fired with the multiple shot with the 6 bolts. 4 of them only made through on my dwarf warriors, so 4 of them actually hit, but none of them, all of them failed to wound. So my dwarf warriors is pretty much it. So at the end of turn 1, I only lose 3 dwarves out of the entire battle, which is looking pretty up considering my last battle with long range firepower ended up being disastrous for my guys. This is looking pretty good. So this is a picture that shows a layout of the table pretty much at the end of turn 1. You can see my dwarf rangers on the southern part of the map, up to the top in the far left corner. You can kind of make out the movement tray of my dwarf warriors. To the right, you can see the Doomfire Warlocks there in the center with the Dark Shards there at the end. So this is pretty much what the table looked like at the end of turn 1 for both Dark Elves and High Elves. So it brings us to the top of turn 2, and we have this photo.
I gotta sing the Doom song now! Doom, 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 doom.
And this is the part where my genius kind of shows through for once. My luck really, really changes. Unlike the last battle that I did where it took forever today for my Chaos Warriors to run across the field, I don't know what was with my dwarves, but this time, man, I don't know, maybe they were drinking the Bugman's brew. This time, they just hauled across the battlefield this time around. It's kind of nice. So I decided to declare charges at the beginning of my turn. With my Dwarf Rangers, I was more than confident that my Dwarf Rangers can make the charge distance to the Dark Shard unit. So I rolled both my D6s and I had my movement to it, and I got a perfect 10, so definitely made it to that one without a problem whatsoever. Now, the problem was that my Dwarf Warriors, I wasn't really sure if they're going to be able to make it or not to the Doomfire Warlocks. So I rolled again, and just like the last roll, I got a perfect 10 again, which is really nice. But when I measured up the tape measure, I realized I was just a hair away from reaching the Doomfire Warlocks. So originally I was going to declare as a failed charge, but Lady Domina, being the classy lady that she is, she said, no, I'll count it. So that was a nice part. So she was really, really charitable on that part. So because of that, my Dwarf Warriors did successfully make their charge, and they engage the Doomfire Warlocks, as you can see there. So right now, movement is totally aces for my team. My army's plan is working well. I'm getting in close combat as quickly as possible. I got, 12 Rangers versus the remainder of her Dark Shards with, a full block of 20 Dwarf Warriors taking on 5 Doomfire Warlocks. This should be cake.
Give them nothing, but take from them everything!
So the very first battle we decided to play out on with the combat phase was the Dwarf Rangers versus the Dark Shards combat. We felt that one was the most critical of the combats, so we wanted to see how that one played out first. So even though I charged first, Warhammer rule dictates that the player with the highest initiative goes first. So naturally, the dwarves would go last in hand-to-hand combat, which makes sense because my dwarves are also carrying great weapons, so they would have struck last no matter what. But the Dark Elves have initiative of 5. Which is one of the highest initiatives of all the armies within the entire set of Warhammer, and plus they always have strike first, which means that if their initiative is higher than yours, they get to reroll misses on their first turn, which also kind of stacks with their Eternal Hatred special rule, which means that they also get to reroll failed hit to wounds in. Not failed hit to wounds. Reroll failed hits with Eternal Hatred. And then when they get that, they also get a bonus for murderous prowess, which means that they also get to reroll any scores of 1 to wound. So the elf armies, they can dish out a lot of dice within the combat phase, and it makes sense too because elves are kind of fast. I mean, they're elves, for goodness sakes, so they need the extra dice as well because elves by default are not very strong. I mean, they only have a strength of 3. And they're not very tough either, with only a toughness of 3 as well. So, elf armies really need this ability to throw out a lot of attacks, so that way they can help kind of balance out the weaknesses. Dwarves, on the other hand, I mean, they have a toughness of 4 standard, so that just kind of shows you how that works. So this is the combat. She attacked one of my units first, and even though she threw out all these dice to rolls, because of dwarf toughness combined with their heavy armor, she only takes out 3 of my men in this combat, and then I attack back. And on this next picture just shows you the rolls that I rolled for the next combat, and that one is just super precious. And as you can see here, this is the die rolls that I made in order to strike back at that Dark Shard unit that I had that only equaled out to 1 kill. By the time the Dark Elves got done whittling down my Rangers, I had about 9 of them left, so I rolled my 9 dice to hit, and these are the scores that I rolled just to hit. A bunch of 1s, a lot of 2s, a couple of 3s, and just 1 5. So basically, my 1 dwarf did hit the target, and luckily for me, with the strength combined with the double-handed weapon, it was powerful enough to kill the 1 elf that I did kill. So in the end, I lose this combat. I think I lose it by, I think I lose it by 1, I believe. Let's see, I charged. She has a banner. Actually, I think I lose it by 1. And so luckily for me, though, my dwarves held the line, and they should, at least speaking. I mean, they're dwarves, for goodness sakes, and they're fighting against dark elves. So right off the bat, I can tell this combat is just going to be amazing. And then we move on to the Dwarf Warriors versus the Doomfire Warlock combat. Now this one was kind of interesting because Doomfire Warlocks are meant to be like a chaff unit. They're meant to do march blocking, harassing the opponents, that sort of thing. And I wanted to see exactly how these guys played on hand-to-hand combat. And I have to admit, Doomfire Warlocks are pretty legit. I mean, they have 2 poisoned attacks. They have a 4-up ward save. They also generate spells and throw magic at you. They're also fast scab, which is pretty good. And as this picture can clearly show you, I mean, they can hold their own pretty well against a solid block of infantry. There's probably a reason why they're also 25 points apiece and why they're also a rare choice. But as you can see in this combat, Elves, they go first naturally because of their Always Strike First abilities. And with Eternal Hatred and Murderous Prowess and Always Strikes First, I mean, they could throw out a lot of dice. Especially when you consider the fact that a lot of these guys have poisoned attacks, which is a really, really scary prospect on that one when you think about it later on. I was actually quite fortunate in this combat. After this first attack of wave attacks from the Doomfire Warlocks, I lose 4 dwarves pretty quickly. 2 of them were from poison attacks. The rest were just, from regular hits and kills and that sort of thing. So that was pretty good. And this time when my dwarves struck back with their great weapons, they managed to kill 3, which isn't bad at all considering that the enemy gets a 4 ward save, which can't be changed at all with strength weapons. But it was pretty nice to take those 3 out. Unfortunately, though, for me anyways, Lady Domina passed her panic check for that unit, so my dwarves are still stuck with this Doomfire Warlock unit for another round.
This is my boomstick!
Now then, for Dark Elf turn number 2, the movement phase, there isn't much movement going on because both of Lady Domina's units are both engaged in hand combat. Her magic phase is also pretty much a wash. She rolled really low for the magic dice, so not much magic happened. But the real miracle is this picture right here, which is the shooting phase for her before she gets to hand-to-hand combat. She felt that maybe the combat between her Doomfire Warlocks and the Dwarf Warriors is going pretty bad, so she decides that she's going to go ahead and just multi-shot her bolt thrower right into the melee and try to kill my troops, as well as her troops. I warned her ahead of time that if she did this, she ran a 50-50 chance of killing her own troops. But she said she didn't care. They looked like they were going to collapse anyway, so she figured she'd try to kill some of my men as well. In like a true, real Braveheart moment, we got reserves, is what she basically says. It's kind of cool. So she rolled her dice to do the multi-shot, and as you can see in this picture, all of her shots made it in the high rolls. She had nothing but 4, 5s, and 6s. So all 6 of her shots actually made that. And it was just absolutely ridiculous. All of her shots made in that one shot, and all of her shots made it, and missed her Doomfire Warlocks and hit me. That was probably the most impressive part of that entire shooting phase. So I just had to show this one. Unfortunately for her, though, the shooting phase wasn't really all that effective. All of her shots hit, but they all failed to wound. So even though it was amazing, all of her shots made that impossible to hit roll. All of her shots didn't make it, though. So, that was kind of sad. But then after shooting goes close combat, and in this one we decided to do the Doomfire Warlocks versus the Dwarf Warriors first. Once again, Doomfire Warlocks, they're the real deal. After another round of combat, she ends up killing 2 of my Dwarf Warriors, you can see in this picture, and I end up only killing 1 of her Doomfire Warlocks. But luckily for me, though, her Doomfire Warlocks did fail their panic test, and so they ran, which was kind of nice. So now, of course, as dwarves, I pursued. Unfortunately, I didn't catch up with their Doomfire Warlocks, but I did get a kind of nice, free little overrun out of it. So, there's that part. And then once again, back to the fight against the Dwarf Rangers. Once again, this combat is not all that impressive. I only inflict 1 wound upon her. She inflicts 1 wound, actually 2 wounds on me. And so after we did the math and figured out what the result was, it looks like I lost by 1 on this one. So I was forced to take a panic check, and that's where the badness happens. I rolled for my panic check to see if my men break. I needed an 8, and I rolled a 9. And so because of that, my dwarfs begin to flee for their freaking lives away from the battlefield, if you can possibly believe it.
A minor setback, girl. We'll be home in no time. I'll just wait until the skin grows back on my eyeballs.
And that brings us to the top of turn 3 for the dwarves. As you can see from this picture, you can see my Dwarf Rangers are fleeing away with the red arrow. At the same time, you can also see Lady Domina's Doomfire Warlock, the one that remains, fleeing up the top with the purple arrow. And this round should really be called the round of flubbing, is what it should just really be called. Just poor dice rolls all around. So I begin my movement phase with a declare charge. Luckily for me, my Rangers do make the charge, and they run into Lady Domina's crossbowmen. And since I don't have a magic phase, you don't have to worry about doing magic all too much. And since we're in hand-to-hand combat, they're really isn't shooting, so the Rangers are fleeing. But this combat round, man, it was just really bad for both sides. We had, I think 6 of my guys could fight, and then I think 5 of hers could as well, including a Supreme Sorceress. Both of us rolled off dice to try to hit each other, and she ended up rolling nothing and couldn't be able to hit me all that much. And then the crazy thing happened that I rolled as well, and nothing really happened on my end either. It was just all of our dice were just rolling 1s, 2s, and 3s, and that was all we were rolling. And so it was actually kind of a wasted round. I was really sad about that because, my battle really hinged on the fact that I really wanted to break this crossbow unit and to send it packing over the hills. But unfortunately, that didn't work out too well either. So in the end, even though I wanted to do hand-to-hand combat, and I was trying to defeat her, it didn't work out to plan. So this turn ended up being a complete waste of time, basically. Which brings us to the top of round 3 for Lady Domina's Dark Elves. As you can see in this picture, movement was really a moot point since no one's really moving around all that much. Lady Domina's Doomfire Warlock, though, at the end of the round did pass a rally check, so her Doomfire Warlock did charge into the flank of my Dwarf Warriors who were engaged with their crossbowmen, so that movement phase did happen. The main highlight, though, however, was with the magic phase, where Lady Domina tried to cast the spell of Word of Pain. Word of Pain is a hex spell, and she was trying to go for the large one, the boosted version, where it's a minus D3 to weapon skill, ballistic skill, as well as I think strength and initiative. So the idea is that she wanted to roll that big spell and really cripple my dwarves, so that way they're easier to wound, and that way I could inflict as many wounds onto her and vice versa. So she takes 3 dice, she rolls it, and she gets a miscast, and she rolls a miscast roll, so the spell goes off with irresistible force, so I can't stop it whatsoever. And so she does just a mean job on all my men. She rolls her D3, ends up rolling a 6, so all 4 stats are dropped down to 1s, which is really sad, and so now she has to roll on the miscast table.
Klaatu, Marata,
The miscast roll was a 7, which was the detonation miscast, which meant that every single model within base contact with the sorcerer takes a strength 10 hit. So right off the bat, that spell goes, detonation goes off. All of her troops kind of basically she loses one of her own men in the process of doing that because there's the guy directly behind her. The guy to the side miraculously survived because I rolled a 1 to see if that happened. But I lose 4 men in that whole process. Oh, sorry, not 4. I lose 5 men in that process. So even before combat can even begin on this turn, I'm already 5 guys down on my Dwarf Warriors. And right now I can tell that this combat isn't going to go well at all. After matchup, of course, you go straight into shooting. Lady Domina takes a repeater bolt thrower, aims it right at my fleeing Dwarf Rangers, cuts loose with another multi-shot on my Dwarf Rangers, and you can see right there the amount of casualty that bad boy inflicts. I lose 2 guys to bolt thrower fire, so 2 more of my Rangers are dead right off the bat. And then we get into close combat phase, and this is where just the brutality begins. Lady Domina's Crosswoman and her Doomfire Warlock just wipe out what remains of my poor Dwarf Warrior regiment, and so that entire unit is now destroyed.
I gotta sing the Doom song now! Doom, 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 doom,
She, of course, overruns my troops, goes right through with the remains of my Dwarf Warriors, and overruns my retreating Dwarf Rangers, who are also fleeing, and she cuts those poor, sad little Dwarf Warriors down into their baser elements and just totally wipes them off. And that is the end of my Dwarf army. And as you can see from this last picture, this is the battlefield for Lady Domina. And as you see that, she has completely tabled me, and this is a major victory for her. And yet, once again, another defeat for Commander CheapSkate. And so with that, we go straight to the recap and go to the after-action report.
I thought about staying. They offered me the chance to lead them, to teach them, to be king.
Uh-huh.
But my place is here, so I swallowed the juice, said the words, and here I am.
Did you say the words right this time?
Well, maybe I didn't say every single tiny little syllable, no, but basically I said them, yeah. Basically.
And so now we're on to the after-action report. This is the part of the show we talk about the battle, reflect upon what happened, and see if we can learn from our mistakes and prepare for the next battle. So once again, this is the end of turn one battle for the Hamejarr campaign. So I was playing, of course, a neutral army because I'm the game master of this campaign. So losing this battle wasn't so much of a big deal for me because it's not like it's really affecting my player army, I guess, because my player army hasn't ran into any headaches yet. So we'll see how that goes. So, but yeah, this was actually a major victory for Lady Domina. She is the Dark Elves player, and she is a very novice player. So this is her first real big battle that she was playing on her own. So it's kind of neat seeing that. So it's kind of neat. A bunch of my buddies are new novice players to the hobby. So I get to teach them how to play and show them how the rules work and things like that. So it was kind of nice seeing that for once. Probably like the biggest thing I got to think about if I had to guess what was the number one thing that really hurt me was probably magic. The magic phase in this battle was really strong for the Dark Elves. Once again, there are Dark Elves, so Dark Elves are really good at magic. I mean, they need to be. I mean, the lore of dark magic, I guess is what it's called, is very powerful. So it's made for a really good offensive spell. So that's kind of nice. I was playing Dwarves, and so we get a natural +2 to Dispel, which is kind of nice. But I should probably have bought something to help kind of balance out that magic factor. Maybe I brought a Rune Smith with me, giving my units some magic resistance, or maybe I'm thinking probably I should have bought some artillery pieces instead. On this one, I was mainly focusing on just infantry a lot, not too much about shooting so much. It was more about the hand-to-hand combat. So my only range options were the Dwarf Rangers. I suppose I could have gotten a Grudge Thrower and just pimped that thing out with all the the standard runes that you usually get for the Stone Thrower, and I guess that could have worked really well because it can crush all kinds of with elves with that bad boy. Maybe I could have gotten an organ gun, or maybe used a cannon of some sort. Either way you look at it, though, I'm pretty sure artillery probably would have tipped the scale in this balance. But I have to admit, when I was using my Rangers, I was trying to go for a shock factor. I was trying to, do the whole scouting, sneak attack type thing, and throw my opponent off balance. I suppose it would have worked if the dice were with me. Which brings me to the very last point. I guess I must have done something wrong in a previous game to anger the dice gods, because I've been rolling really poorly these last few battles. I've been just really bombing my rolls. 1s, 2s, and 3s are the bane of my existence with these two battles. So I guess I need to find a small goat or a chicken of some sort and sacrifice the dark powers, and maybe the dice gods will smile at me, I guess. I don't know. We'll see what we got to do about that one. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all we can really reflect upon for this battle. So this, once again, brings us back to the end of Hamejarr Shame's campaign, Turn 1. So this is the last battle of Turn 1. So the next series of battle reports after this will be on Turn 2 of the campaign. And on that one, we get to see a lot more action and see how that battle set goes. So, yeah, that'll be it for now. And remember, no matter where you go, there you'll be. This is Commander CheapSkate signing off, and we will see you on the next one. Bye.